What forces can compel a nation to march down a path of conquest, to cloak expansion in the language of prosperity while sowing the seeds of a continental war? During the early years of the Showa period, Japan found itself at such a crossroads, its political landscape transforming into a crucible of totalitarianism, ultranationalism, and fascism. Within the corridors of power, an aggressive new vision for the empire was taking shape, one that saw territorial acquisition not merely as a matter of pride, but as a vital necessity for national survival. Many of Japan's political elite grew obsessed with the idea of acquiring new lands for resource extraction and, just as critically, for the settlement of what they deemed a surplus population. These burgeoning ambitions festered and grew, creating a volatile atmosphere that would ultimately lead to the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War and the full-scale invasion of China in the year 1937. The siren song of military conquest found a particularly receptive audience during the global economic turmoil of the Great Depression in the 1930s. As economies around the world crumbled, the argument that expansion would solve Japan's pressing economic problems gained significant currency. The nation's population was growing at a rapid pace, standing at close to 65 million people in 1930, a demographic reality that necessitated massive food imports to feed its citizens. To sustain such a level of imports, Japan had to be able to export its own goods, yet its path to international markets was increasingly obstructed. Western nations erected formidable tariff walls that severely limited Japanese exports, while discriminatory legislation and pervasive anti-Japanese racism in many countries served as insurmountable barriers to immigration, effectively trapping the growing populace within its borders. Hemmed in by economic blockades and social prejudice, the military and its political allies began to champion a brutal alternative. If Japan could not trade or emigrate its way to stability, it would carve out a new empire by force. This dangerous ideology was put into catastrophic practice on the 18th of September 1931, when Japanese forces orchestrated the Mukden Incident. In an act of calculated deception, radical army officers planted and detonated a bomb on a small portion of the South Manchuria Railroad, a key Japanese asset in the region. This false flag event, a deliberate fabrication designed to provoke conflict, was immediately and falsely attributed to Chinese nationalists. It was the pretext the Japanese military had been waiting for. Acting with a startling degree of independence from the more moderate civilian government in Tokyo, the army used the fabricated attack to justify a full-scale invasion of Manchuria. The response was swift and overwhelming. Within a mere 5 months, the Japanese army had seized control of the vast territory of Greater Manchuria. The conquered land was promptly renamed Manchukuo and reconstituted as a puppet state, a nominally independent nation that was, in reality, under the complete and total control of the Japanese military. The successful seizure of Manchuria only emboldened the militarists, setting a grim precedent for future aggression. A subsequent small incident, its origins almost irrelevant in the grand scheme of escalating tensions, was deliberately magnified by the Japanese army into a justification for a full-scale war. This marked the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War, a brutal and protracted conflict fought between the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan from 1937 to 1945. This war is not merely a regional conflict in historical memory, it is widely considered an integral part of the Second World War and is often regarded as the true beginning of that global conflagration in Asia. Japanese forces, leveraging their military superiority, succeeded in occupying almost the entire coast of China. Their campaign was characterized by extreme brutality, and they committed severe war atrocities against the Chinese populace. The horror of this period is perhaps best encapsulated by the events that transpired during the fall of Nanking, the Chinese capital, where Japanese troops engaged in a campaign of mass murder and violence that shocked the world. To justify this immense campaign of violence and conquest, Japan articulated a grand, sweeping vision for the continent's future, the establishment of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. This ambitious concept was formally announced in August of 1940, at a time when geopolitical tensions with Western powers, particularly the United States and Great Britain, were reaching a fever pitch. Ostensibly, the initiative was presented as a noble endeavor to create an independent and self-sufficient economic and political bloc composed entirely of Asian nations. This proposed union was to include Japan, its puppet state of Manchukuo, Korea, and significant parts of China, along with resource-rich territories in Southeast Asia, such as French Indochina and the Dutch East Indies. The project was promoted under the resonant slogan, "Asia for Asians," a powerful piece of propaganda designed to frame Japan as a liberator, freeing the continent from the yoke of European imperialism. The reality, however, was far from this altruistic portrayal. The true purpose of the sphere was to ensure Japan's absolute political and industrial hegemony over the entire region, supplanting Western colonial powers with a new Japanese master, while simultaneously creating a bulwark against the spread of communist influence. The thinly veiled nature of this ambition was laid bare by Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo, who served from 1941 to 1942 and again in 1945. He stated with chilling clarity that should Japan succeed in creating this sphere, it would emerge as the undisputed leader of Eastern Asia, and the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere would in fact be synonymous with the Japanese Empire itself.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts or what you'd like to see next.